The Aya Sofia is one of the most beautiful buildings in the world. The monument, whose name translates as Holy Wisdom, is one of the most popular tourist destinations in Istanbul. The Hagia Sophia welcomes over 3 million tourists a year to marvel at the monument's complex architecture, golden adornments, and awe-inspiring dome. But one can't help but ask if each of these 3 million tourists were privy to the intense political, cultural, and religious tensions which defines the controversial history. Since its first construction in 537 AD, the Hagia Sophia building has served as an Eastern Orthodox cathedral, a Roman Catholic cathedral, an Ottoman mosque, a secular monument, and as of July 2020, a mosque once again. Behind this fascinating history is a deep religious tension which has engulfed the Middle East for hundreds of years. The monument has seen revisions in the years since, and architectural fashions vary throughout the complex, a physical reflection of the toll this conflict has taken on the building. Welcome to Intrigued Mind, and join us today as we track the turbulent history of the complex and explore the secret history of the Aya Sofia. Before we start, are you subscribed to the Intrigued Mind channel? Be sure to hit that notification bell to always keep you up to date with the most fascinating and forgotten parts of our history. Before and during the construction of the building we know today, the site underneath the Hagia Sophia had a turbulent religious history. Before Roman Emperor Constantine the Great began to build the first Church of Holy Wisdom, the site was said to have been the home to a pagan temple. Constantine's church began construction in 325 and was inaugurated in 360. However, the temple, which was known at the heart of the city then known as Constantinople, was the setting for a major scandal in the early 5th century. The then Archbishop St. John Chrysostom garnered a large following with teachings on the misuse of riches by the wealthy. After angering the influential with his rhetoric, John was banished. In reaction, the masses began a riot. During the riot, a fire erupted which partially destroyed the first Church of Holy Wisdom. A few years later, the building was rebuilt and enlarged by Roman Emperor Constans I. Christened the Church of Theodosius II, the building was inaugurated in 415. The church lasted for over 100 years, until the Nika insurrection in the year 532 in reaction to high taxes, corruption and cruelty to their leaders. The Nika riots were the most violent riots in the city's history, with nearly half of the Constantinople being burned and tens of thousands of people killed. One such building was the Church of Theodosius II. During the riots, the church was burned to the ground, well beyond repair. The destruction of the Church of Theodosius II was a point of inspiration for Byzantine Emperor Justinian I. Perhaps to move past the turbulent history of the grounds, Justinian hatched a plan. Instead of attempting to rebuild the church again, he had envisioned a glorious replacement. After only a few short weeks, Justinian ordered a replacement to begin construction. The building which stands today is largely the same at which was constructed by Justinian in the 6th century. The Hagia Sophia was built in a remarkably short time of about 6 years. It was finally completed in 537 CE. Except for a partial collapse of the structure's famous dome in 558 and 2 further collapses, the structure saw only a few minor restorations over the next 900 years. Before the construction of the building which we would come to know as the Hagia Sophia, the grounds bore witness to turmoil, death and destruction. But these tensions would only come to be further exaggerated as the tense religious dynamics which define coming eras would continue to influence physically the magnificent structure. As well as being an important building in Byzantine history, the Hagia Sophia also became a site of the phenomenal episode in the history of the Ottoman Empire, after the fall of Constantinople in 1453. But as well as an important site in the long battle between the Byzantine and Ottoman empires, the Hagia Sophia also sits as the intersection between Christianity and Islam. By the mid-15th century, the Byzantine Empire had retreated to only Constantinople and the land immediately west of it. Whatever remained came to an end when the Ottoman Empire, led by Sultan Mehmed II, besieged the city for 55 days. In accordance with the Ottoman tradition and custom, the Sultan allowed his troops 3 full days to pillage and loot the city shortly after it was captured. Despite his original plans to return after to claim the remaining contents for himself, a tour of the looted and enslaved city inspired him to stop the pillage at the end of the first day. According to accounts from the final days of the conquest, Sultan Mehmed II rode directly to the church, claimed it for himself, and ordered every imam to ascend the pulpit and make the declaration of the Muslim faith. Other accounts include Mehmed's conversion of Aya Sofia being marked with the proclamation, "Hereafter my capital is Istanbul." The unrivaled size and magnificence of Justinian's church caused it to be the first among the Christian churches appropriated to Muslim ritual. The transition from church to mosque was relatively easy. The Muslims covered their frescoes inside with plaster and put 4 minarets around the outside of it. This can be seen to this day in the starkly undecorated appearance of not only the dome itself, but the panels that surround it. Furthermore, the walls are decorated by Byzantine mosaics. The fact these mosaics remain on the walls of the Hagia Sophia is indicative of a deep respect held for the Byzantine art adopted after the fall of Constantinople. Furthermore, a few additions were made. A great chandelier, a mihrab, a niche indicating the direction of Mecca, and a minibar, or a pulpit, were all added to assist the conversion from church to mosque. When Constantinople fell in 1453, it came as a climax to the long-term conflict between the Ottoman and the Byzantine empires. However, it also marked the climax to the religious conflict in the Middle East, the Christianity of the Eastern Roman Empire and Ottoman's Muslim faith. However, despite this conflict, the interior of the Hagia Sophia shows us that in some respects, this Islamization of a Christian church demonstrated more of a union of religions. Christian idols, for the most part, remained and were protected by the appreciation for the Byzantine art and architecture is apparent in the monument which stands to this day. Since the beginning of Ottoman rule, the Hagia Sophia has stood without much interference. Except for the replacement of the original wooden minaret and the erection of another red minaret, the monument exists structurally unchanged from the conversion in the 15th century. However, Hagia Sophia has seen numerous renovations and the inclusion of structural supports. In the 16th century, Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent bought 2 colossal candlesticks from his conquest of the Kingdom of Hungary and placed them beside his mihrab. Also, during Suleiman's reign, the mosaics depicting Jesus, Mary and various Byzantine empires were covered by white plaster which was later removed. However, Hagia Sophia's position as a mosque was ceased in the year 1935 as part of the sweeping reforms of the first president of the Turkish Republic, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. Plaster and certain floor decorations were removed and the building was turned into a secular museum, implying that the religious tensions which cursed the history of the monument were finally put to rest. However, the religious tensions surrounding the building have reawakened. In the years since, there have been numerous petitions, campaigns and demands to return the monument to either a church or a mosque. In 2020, Turkey's government celebrated the 567th anniversary of the fall of Constantinople with an Islamic prayer in the Hagia Sophia. The move was condemned domestically and internationally by the Christian organizations. The Archbishop of Constantinople, Bartholomew I, described the declaration as disappointing to millions of Christians around the world. But the move was also condemned by the World Heritage organizations like UNESCO, whose deep regret was stated regarding the sudden and secretive nature of the conversion. On the 10th of July 2020, despite both national and international protests, criticism and condemnations, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan signed a decree annulling the Aya Sofia's museum status, reverting it back to a mosque. However, a spokesman for the Turkish government gave assurances that Christian iconography would continue to be protected throughout the complex. To some, this looks like history repeating itself. Hagia Sophia is not only one of the world's most beautiful monuments, but a historical landmark with a fascinating legacy. Aya Sofia represents not only the site of conflict or change, but the coming together of people and religion throughout the history. As each phase of the building's past came and went, remnants of the artistic and architectural decisions remained. In many respects, Aya Sofia can still be considered simultaneously a mosque, church, museum and monument. But with this turbulent history in mind, the rekindling of centuries-old religious tension in the region is even more troubling. Despite this, certain assurances that the landmark will remain open to all and that Christian iconography will continue to be protected add to the sense of optimism that one day soon reconciliation can occur. Of his travels to Istanbul in 2006, writer Gerard McCarthy was struck by a similar feeling. Looking down, he wrote, I could see the crowds from different continents, their heads craning up towards the dome. I wondered, is it only the anonymous eye of the tourist that religions can be reconciled? For more videos of the most amazing forgotten parts of our history, be sure to subscribe to the Intrigued Mind channel, like the video and leave your suggestions in the comments below. See you next time.